To honor our fallen troops during the month of Memorial Day, we'll be doing a read of something a little bit different. This is a selected section entitled When the Yanks Went In, from a World War I historic anthology known as Deeds of Heroism and Bravery. This focuses on the first battle that an American force engaged with the Germans on the Western Front independently. The narrative is written from the perspective of a U.S. newspaper and a French general, so it is of course very glowing in praise for the Americans. But it is an interesting slice of the terrible war during that time. I hope you will find this historic narrative informative. The link for the reading is available in the description below on Project Gutenberg and includes some additional photos that weren't included in this reading. If you're enjoying this reading from Friendly Frog Press, please make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and drop a comment below whether you liked it or not. Thank you for listening. When the Yanks Went In, the story of the first American soldiers to go it alone in banging the Huns. Narrated by Paul Bohart. Because they were recruited in the New England states, the boys of the 26th Division were known as Yankees, or the Yankee Division. They set up pretty good claim to the distinction by acts of unit heroism not excelled for dash, daring, and effective service by any troops opposed to the Huns. The Yankee Division was the first of the AEF to take part in a great offensive in France. It was organized under the command of Major General C.R. Edwards, August 13, 1917, arrived in France in September, and in January 1918 was undergoing special training on the Chemin des Dames front. It was assigned to the Toul sector and was in position by the end of March. 10 days later, the enemy struck its first serious blow at the line, a blow which turned out to be far more serious to the Germans than to the New Englanders. It was the beginning of the 5 days fight known as the Battle of Apremont, though it really was the Battle of Bois Brûlés, the worst of the fight being in the burned wood on the hilltop where the 104th Regiment was stationed. In an article in the Boston Globe devoted to the 26th, Willard F. DeLue says, "From the very first day, there had been artillery action. In fact, the Boche set up a row while the Yankees were coming into the line, before they got their packs off. Now, at 5 o'clock in the morning of April 10th, the Germans sent over a body of 700 or 800 picked shock troops against Colonel Shelton's boys. But the Yankee artillery got the jump on them and opened up with a barrage that couldn't have been better. It smashed the Germans' attack so badly that it broke down, and for the rest of that day, and for 2 more, the Boches were content to throw over a heavy artillery fire. On the 13th, however, they were at it again. This time they planned a little better. The center of the assault was directed against the French units on the left of the 104th, and it wasn't long before they sent over a hurry call for a counterattack by the Yanks. The 104th responded handsomely. They swept through Bois Brûlés right onto the German flank and relieved the pressure on the French line. But by that time their own flank was threatened, so the Yanks suddenly changed direction and attacked by their own flank, a difficult maneuver but beautifully executed. The fighting kept up stubbornly. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the Germans had broken through and grabbed some of the advanced forts held by the 104th and were filtering in through communication trenches. It was apparent this was no mere raid. So the reserves were ordered up, but before they arrived, the enemy had been hurled back again, and by 6 that night, the heaviest of the fighting was over. On the 14th, there was further action, but the Boche had been licked, and he knew it. His losses were tremendous, ours comparatively light. Many an act of heroism took place that day. The flags of the 104th Infantry were later decorated by the French for the gallantry displayed by its men, and the individual awards of American and French decorations are eloquent. That was the first battle fought by Americans, any Americans in France, in which they were not supported by French infantry. In every battle. Having been inducted into the firing line, the 26th had no surcease, but took part in every subsequent battle up to the signing of the armistice, missing the promised rest time after time owing to the exigencies of the campaigns. And according to the complaint of a captured German lieutenant, they did not always play the game right. On one occasion, the moment an enemy barrage was lifted, a body of Yankees darted ahead and actually nabbed some of the advancing Huns, the lieutenant included. He spartingly said in reproach of these tactics, "They should not have been where they were. They were coming right through our own barrage. It might have been wiped out." That the Americans were so apt to be where they shouldn't have been was greatly disconcerting to the Huns more than once. They did things in such an unconventional way, acting so much on individual initiative, that they frequently spoiled the precise calculations of the German machine. The French had greater appreciation of the Yankee method. The commanding officer of the 32nd French said this of the 26th: "I salute its colors, and thank it for the splendid services it has rendered here to the common cause, under the distinguished command of their chief, General Edwards. The high-spirited soldiers of the Yankee Division have taught the enemy some bitter lessons at Bois Brûlés, at Sessafree, at Zivray-Marvazon. They have taught him to realize the staunch vigor of the sons of the great republic fighting for the world's freedom. The division was also in the Chateau Thierry battle," Mr. Deleu writes. "On the 9th, the fighting on this new field began. The Boche, in the early morning, swept down into Vaux and established machine gun post. You've got to drive those, censored, out of there, or we'll be the laughingstock of the division," was the word sent out by Colonel Logan. And so the driving began. The fight for Vaux will be long remembered, a picturesque fight with groups of men rushing here and there, cleaning up snipers and machine gunners, rushing hostile positions. Overhead, the roar of the American barrage. Below, the hum of countless machine guns. The cleanup was thorough. 3 days later, Foch's famous counteroffensive began on July 18th at 4:25 in the morning. The night before, at 10 o'clock, a terrific thunderstorm had broken. Lightning flashed and rain fell in sheets. But in the morning there came a clearing, and when the fated hour approached, there was a rosy flush on the morning sky. Commanders wore an anxious look. A surprise had been planned, and a clear day was not to their liking. But just before the time set, a heavy mist began to descend. All was well. A gun spoke, then the roar from 100, 1,000 iron-throated messengers of death. The creeping barrage had opened. The infantry was to attack simultaneously. The Yanks moved forward on the left, pivoting upon their own right, held by the 101st, in front of Vaux. The 102nd came next, but it was the boys of the 103rd and 104th on the left that did the early fighting. "We're in Torcy," was the first message sent back. Then came a delay. A hitch had taken place, but by 9 o'clock, Bourges, Belleau, and Givry were in the hands of the Yankees. The first objectives taken, preparations were at once made for a further advance. But the French to the north had been held up. On the 19th, there was no forward movement until 3 in the afternoon. Hill 193, above Givry, where the French were held up, was passed on the flank, causing the Germans to fall back. Étrepi and Étrepi Woods were reached, taken, and passed. So the Genetry farm in the woods close by La Almadière, in the night of the 19th, there was another halt. Then forward again at daybreak, with the 101st and 102nd Infantry getting into action late this day. And sweeping forward through Vaux in the woods close to Bourges, they crossed the Soissons Chateau Thierry road, and by the 22nd found themselves in front of Épée and Trugny, winning more French praise. It was here that the severest fighting of the drive took place. In Épée, the Germans planted machine guns every 7 yards. In Trugny and in the woods that lie on the hillsides to the east of both towns, they had done likewise. The 101st tackled the Trugny proposition. Colonel Logan's men were in and out of the town twice. But the German artillery had the range just right, and whenever the Yankees went in, flooded the place with mustard gas. On July 23rd, Colonel Logan borrowed a little ground on his right from the French, encircled Trugny on the south, and started up behind it through Trugny Wood. It was a terrible fight. That night, the 101st broke through the German defenses and forced a retreat. Meantime, the 3 other infantry regiments were making constant frontal attacks. The 102nd got into Trugny and captured the Gunnow on Boston Common. On the 23rd, the 103rd and 104th infantry regiments were relieved. And on the 25th, the 101st and 102nd were relieved. But the artillery brigade kept on, supporting 3 other American divisions, until the Vele River was reached August 5th. It was in this drive, particularly the Sherburne's outfit earned the name of the best field artillery in France. A regular army officer watching the guns in action said, "I have been in the army 30 years and never have seen field artillery until this day." By August 7th, the whole division, including the artillery, was back in villages along the Marne between Château-Thierry and Paris. The people of the countryside hailed the men of the 26th as saviors of Paris. Those who went into the French capital were greeted with enthusiasm. Men and women embraced them and kissed them. General de Goutte, famed commander of the French 6th Army, with which the Americans fought, wrote to General Edwards, "The operations carried out by the 26th American Division from July 18th to July 24th demonstrated the fine soldierly qualities of this unit and the worth of its fine leader, General Edwards. The 26th Division fought brilliantly, advancing more than 15 kilometers in depth in spite of the desperate resistance of the enemy. I take pleasure in communicating to General Edwards and his valiant division this expression of my esteem, together with my heartiest congratulations for the manner in which they have served the common cause." The last shot. And so on until, drawn from temporary reserve at Verdun, the 26th was ordered into the Argonne battle. The Globe Chronicler continues. On October 15th, the 104th was fighting in conjunction with the French in a squadron of 15 French tanks. What the fighting was like may be judged from the fact that only one of those 15 tanks came back. On the 16th, other units went in, and by October 18th, command passed to General Edwards. The new position in line was on the east side of the Meuse River, facing generally east. Ahead lay the scrubby woods of Aumont, Chêne, Ormont, Belleau, and the skirts of the Bois de Wavry and of Saint-Menu, the latter to the extreme left, nearer to Verdun. The attack on these positions began on the 23rd and continued until the 27th. The woods, so far as trees went, consisted of a few dead, blasted stumps, standing out like skeletons in the midst of thick, deadly underbrush. The whole ground had been fought over recently. Bodies of dead French and Germans lay there. And in one place was a valley full of skeletons of the Crown Prince's men who had made the desperate attack on the forts of Verdun. These woods were taken and lost again. Taken and lost. Taken and lost. 4 times did the 101st battle through Belleau, only to be blasted back by artillery. The enemy had sworn to stick it out, for an attack here threatened the lines of communication. Stick they did. Of those last days a volume might well be written, of the desperate charges, the hell of shell fire, the deluges of gas, the hum of millions of machine gun death messengers that brought their messages home. And through it all, partly over ground they'd won before, they plunged in the dull desperation of despair. In the previous days they had been robbed of the officers they knew and loved. Edwards had been relieved October 25th. Others had preceded him and others followed. Cole, Logan, Hume. Desperately these boys fought and paid the price. On the 9th the line was drawn back a little. The accompanying units couldn't keep pace. And still the battle raged. A bloody, maddening, disheartening battle. Raged despite reports that an armistice had been agreed upon. Even at 10 in the morning of November 11th, 1 hour before the fighting was to stop, the 26th was ordered forward again to straighten out the line. In that hour, hundreds were lost. The Yankee division fought up to the last shot. That shot fired, the division remained a wreck. General Frankie Bamford, the new commander, reported that the division was in no condition to go to the Rhine. That day, the 11th, 1,200 replacements were received, and more were on their way. When the last hour's fight began, one regiment, normally 3,000 strong, had only 240 rifles. End of narrative. Thank you so much for listening to this reading from Friendly Frog Press. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and drop a comment below whether you thought it was good or not. If you want to shoot your mouth off at me, you can find me on X at pbohart. I have a Substack at Paul Bohart where I post original work as well as commentary on some of the classics. I'll also try to post public domain content for the readings in case you want to read along. To see our entire catalog of original and classic books, please visit our website at friendlyfrogpress.com. If you'd like to reach out to me on email, paulbohart@gmail.com. The links are all below in the description. This is Friendly Frog Press, where the classics come alive. I'm Paul Bohart, signing off.